talk to us. I think we're live. I just want to say, Felicia, please, thank you. And I really wish to start by conveying my deepest gratitude to you, Felicia, and the entire family, of which you're a very, very precious part, for being here with us today. And I want to also welcome everybody who's listening into the conversation, to the POP Climate Leadership Conversations, a tribute to our chief mentor. This project aims to strengthen youth leadership and explore tactics that empower the youth to take action and tackle the most pressing environmental issues faced globally. We are conducting a series of conversations on leadership strategies, recommendations, reflections, and examples, each focused on global leadership and a different pressing issue. The initiative is designed and implemented as a tribute to our chief mentor, late Dr. R.K. Pachauri. Today, we have the pleasure and the great privilege of speaking with Felicia. She's the director of Sidewalk School, which focuses on migration and climate refugee issues in a manner unparalleled, to be totally honest. And so I know that today's conversation is going to be rich with real life experiences and learning. And I just want to say, Felicia, thank you once again for exemplifying the highest values, great leadership and initiative in manner we have not encountered before. I'm saying this really honestly. I've, just really mean that. And I just want to say we're humbled and honored to be here with you. We listen to your words and the heartbeat behind it. So thank you once again, Felicia, for being here. I'm going to ask Anna if she'd get us started, please, with an introduction. Not that Felicia needs it, but thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ash. I will now go ahead and introduce our guest speaker for all of us who are here in the Zoom or who are watching us via YouTube. Felicia Rangel-Sampanaro is one of the directors at the Sidewalk School. The Sidewalk School is a rapid response organization that started in 2019 inside of Matamoros with one single mission, which was education. The Sidewalk School now serves food on a daily basis, provides housing and medical care to asylum seekers, and last but not least, education to the children of asylum seekers. We are very honored to have you here today and to have the pleasure of speaking with you. As Dr. Ash was mentioning, we'll focus the questions led by different youth leaders on migration and some of them on climate refugees. As if you work with migration, we know you are closely with that topic as well. So I will hand it over to Dr. Ash, who will be helping us with the first question.
Thank you so much, Anna, for getting us started. And once again, Felicia, for your time and your unparalleled leadership. And we'd love to start the conversation by asking you just a little bit about the Sidewalk School. If you could talk to us a little bit about it, tell us more about it, and also share what leadership, since you are you're someone we really look up to. If you could tell us what leadership within the context of your work and all that you do really means in the context of Sidewalk School. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. So that's a big question. So what the Sidewalk School does now has changed from what we used to do back inside the Matamoros encampment where we started. Let me say the Sidewalk School has now worked inside of 2 US-made encampments. And the Matamoros encampment, before it closed last year, we were focused on education. We did provide food and clothing and shoes. We did do all that as well. But once the Reynosa encampment opened, our focus had to shift to something very different, which was everything. Reynosa is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. I don't know if a lot of people know that. And the Reynosa encampment has now been opened for a full year, and it continues on to today. When we first started crossing into Reynosa, no other American NGOs would step foot inside that city. That's why we started with the food, medical care, shelter. We're now building a shelter. We're actually funding 2 shelters being built in Reynosa. Education came in later, unfortunately, because we had to focus on feeding people every day and making sure that they were safe as that encampment grew from maybe 20, 25 families to over 2,000 people, which is where it sits today. In county, more asylum seekers are coming to the border because Title 42 is being lifted. And if you don't know what Title 42 is, let me tell you very quickly. Title 42 was put in place by Trump because of the pandemic, COVID, and he closed our borders using it. It has continued under Biden. He was supposed to lift it last year, never did. It goes on to this day. It's now supposed to be lifted on May 23rd of this year. That's what we've been told. So more asylum seekers are coming to the border cities, and Reynosa is, that encampment is continuing to grow. As far as leadership goes in this whole thing, since the Sidewalk School was initially the only American NGO willing to cross into Reynosa, and we took on so many different roles. When other American NGOs decided, like, okay, I'll cross, we were the ones helping to make that connection with the other shelters, with the other pastors. Let me say, this is not just an American effort. We have a lot of partners in Reynosa on the Mexico side that we communicate with on a daily basis. We also run the chat group that includes the Americans and the Mexico side. We put them all together. This is something that can't just be done by the Americans. This is a group effort on both sides of the border, and that's how it should be. We are the foreigners in that country. We are the guests in that city. So of course you should include people who live there. We also do meetings with both governments, US and Mexico. And if you follow the Sidewalk School, you know I don't speak Spanish, and I still don't, unfortunately. I think there's too much going on in my brain every day for me to pick it up. It's now been 4 years of me in Mexico, and I still can't speak the language. But yes, I go to all the meetings. Private, public, you name it. I still help out in the camp. I have somehow made this work, and we've grown. And leadership is something, when I was first asked to do this, I called my mom and I was like, am I a leader? I don't know if I would characterize myself as a leader, because I'm a team member. It takes all of us in the Reynosa group to make this work, not just one. And as a leader, you are a follower, and you should follow, and you should know when to follow, to be quiet and let another team member lead. Your job, if you want to call it being a leader, is to keep everyone together and keep everyone focused on the same goal. Sometimes people will not want to go down the path that you want them to go down. They'll go to the left, and that's fine too. Go to the left as long as the end game is still the same for that team member. Only thing that needs to be the same is the goal. How you get there is how you get there. But we all need to get there together. Other times, and this has happened, people will come in and they'll tell you, I don't want to be part of this team. And that's fine. You don't have to be part of the team. We just have to see how you fit into what we're doing. And from my experience up to this point, usually people who don't want to be part of the team, they remove themselves. It doesn't even take long. It's hard to isolate yourself from a team. It's hard to keep going. But that's been my experience so far. And it may be different for you. But if it's a good, solid team you have going on, and your goal is the same, you will eventually make it. Did I answer the question, Ash?
Oh my goodness. It was just absolutely, it was so profound and so beautiful. And I just want to say thank you because, I know through some conversations I've been so blessed to have with you about, how you started this work, and there've been so many policy issues, geographic issues, politics, a whole lot of things. And you're right. I mean, in just sort of steering everybody and keeping them inspired and being inspired, like you said, being part of a team is about the collective energy, and it's incredible, because I'm imagining that you're in a lot of discussions here, and especially since there is a language barrier, that even being able to be on the same page in all of these discussions, you are definitely an integral part of a whole, and that's how you're able to move forward. And it's absolutely beautiful. I was going to ask you if you'd spend just a few minutes, Felicia, also for everybody here, just telling that story a little bit once more, about how you were inspired to set up Sidewalk School. I know you've talked about it, I've heard you before, but I think that it's just incredible. You continue to contend with all kinds of obstacles and barriers, but keep moving forward. And I think that in itself is so powerful. Thank you.
So the main thing any team member, leader needs to do is to keep moving forward. So let me just say that, and then I will go back to tell you how we started and how we have continued on. But that's the main message I want to give to anyone who thinks about leading something. No matter what's going on in your personal life, in your professional life, you have to keep going. Unfortunately, you do. And a lot of things will happen in your private life that are sad, and you still have to go to work. I don't take vacations. I don't do birthdays. I don't take the weekend off. I work 7 days a week. Seriously, 7 days a week. As the other NGOs are able, you see them on trips and out to dinner. Victor and I, we don't do that. We have to work. We work when other people aren't working. And I do believe that's why we have been so successful. It's the drive. It's the endurance. We have gone through so many things in Reynosa that you probably can't even imagine. And yet after it's over, we'll work. The next day, we'll go back to work. Reynosa is one of the most dangerous cities in the world for a good reason. And we've lived that for a year. And we have had experiences, bad experiences in Reynosa. And we go to work after it's done, after it's over. We don't get any financial help from the US government. I was just told in a meeting with the White House about 3 days ago or something, on last Friday. I asked again if they will fund an American NGO, but because we work on the Mexico side, you don't get funding from the US government. I don't know if a lot of people know that. And the answer was just no, we're not going to fund you. This has been 4 years without any funding from our own government. And these are US asylum seekers, future US citizens, that they refuse to help. So funding is another issue. Victor and I every day have to find a way to find money. These shelters that are currently being built cost a lot of money. That's the only thing I can say. Let's, separate the fact that we've built 3 schools in Reynosa, a school going to each new shelter as well. We have a 3-story building in Reynosa that's used as the flagship school that's across the street from the Reynosa encampment that we keep going. We were at one point the main providers of COVID tests, and we do have a form used the asylum seeker can cross that says the Sidewalk School on it, and it's for COVID testing, and the US government does accept it. The Sidewalk School has branched out in so many different areas because we had to. And it's things like that. And you have your personal life going at the same time, but you have to keep all of these pieces moving. You do. No matter what's being thrown your way, you have staff issues. We also do provide food inside the camp every day. That's something we don't usually make public for safety reasons for Victor and I. But all of that has to continue on. And then you do have your teammates that you may have some issues with. And that's fine too. Not everyone's meant to like you. And you're not meant to like everyone. But that's not what you're there for. You're there for to get to the goal. That goal, that's what you're there for. So they may not like you, you may not like them, but you respect them and let them work. They respect you and let you work. Don't call each other. Don't go out to dinner together. Don't have lunch, but work. All of that deals with leadership and what you have to accept and what you're willing to take on. And the fact that you're willing to endure all of that and keep going. Me not speaking the same language, to me, that's an afterthought. That hasn't stopped the Sidewalk School at all. I've dealt with it. I continue to deal with it. There are a lot of other more serious major issues that have to be addressed from the time I wake up until the time I go to bed. So speaking the same language, that's not a hurdle for me. This is my 4th year. The hurdle are the laws and policies being put in place by the US government that's working with the Mexican government. As an encampment has been out there for a year in county with only minority asylum seekers. We are going to touch upon racism just a tad bit because I am the only Black person in this committee of this group of NGOs. I'm the lone Black person, which is hard at times. It is. And when I go to Mexico, that is sometimes an issue as well. Most people don't realize I'm Black until I tell them. And I have faced a lot of racism on both sides of the border, not just one. Both sides of the border, I have been called names, references have been made. It is what it is. And I keep moving. I'll tell you I'm Black. That's insulting to me. Don't say that around me. You can feel however you want to feel. Just keep quiet about it. I don't need to know your personal thoughts at all times. I just need to have this meeting with you. I need to work with you. I need to get this done. I'm trying to get to the goal I told you about. So now let's have this meeting and let's move on. There will be many things thrown your way and you need to get over it. Get over it, get out of your feelings, move on, get to work. That's what I do on both sides of the border. And I have been called some awful names to my face. Okay. Let's move on now. But back to the original question, the Sidewalk School. The Sidewalk School was started because there wasn't any education being provided to children asylum seekers in Matamoros, and it's not happening in Reynosa either. Most Americans don't think about that. When you put people inside of an encampment, you're taking away the child's education. So everything you're complaining about how they're coming here and taking our menial jobs and living off food stamps, you're making that so by not giving these children an education. You're helping that false narrative along. If this child can't read and write, but comes into our country, what do you think is going to happen? You're not giving them even an elementary level of education. So what do you think is going to happen? It's going to be that false narrative that you've put out there. The Sidewalk School only hires teachers who have a degree from their home country. So whenever you go to our social media and you see a teacher, that teacher has a degree. So that's also taken away from the false narrative that these are a bunch of uneducated people coming here, taking menial jobs and living off food stamps. No, we've met doctors and lawyers out in that encampment. We're taking away everything from them when they come to these border cities and telling them to live with it. Good luck to you. But there are a lot of professionals that live out in that encampment with their entire family. But that's what the US government is doing and then won't help them. But as we're seeing now with the Ukrainians and Tijuana, they have opened up a facility ran somehow by the state in that city and giving the Ukrainians a gym and beds to live in. And they only have to wait 30 days to cross. How is that possible? And why aren't the US government and the Mexican government doing that in Reynosa for the minority asylum seekers? There are no white people inside the Reynosa encampment. That's just a fact. White people don't live inside that camp. Afghanistan people don't live inside that camp. One Afghanistan gentleman worked at the Sidewalk School in Reynosa. I told him when I met him, you will be out of here before your colleagues. His colleagues live there today. He's been out of Reynosa for 5 or 6 months now. That's just how the US government has it set up. If you're not a minority, you get out. If you're a minority, you live in dirt. And good luck to you, as we don't fund any NGO, American NGOs, that risk their lives every day to help you. Good luck to that American NGO. And goodbye. And we shut the door and we turn our backs to the minorities. The Ukrainians, as we speak, are crossing right now. As the students who have been going to Sidewalk School since we started in Reynosa continue to stay there, the same faces and the same little kids. I had a little girl who's actually an American citizen, but her mom is not. And so that's how they got deported to the Reynosa encampment. She's 10. Yesterday, she told me she wanted to die. This little girl's been out in the Reynosa encampment for 6 to 8 months. It's hard. And no one talks about the suicide rates and the fact that kids do try to kill themselves. These encampments aren't meant to be. And if you're white, you don't live in them and you cross. But if you're brown or black, you live in dirt for 2 years. That's how long the Matamoros encampment lasts. This will be Victor and I's 4th year in a US-made encampment, our 2nd encampment. I asked Victor yesterday, do you think this will be our life? Going border city to border city, teaching or helping people run encampments, since we now have, and which is awful, so much experience in working inside of encampments along the border. Who wants to say they have that experience? But Victor and I do. We know how to run an encampment. Did that answer the question?
This, I can only fold my hands and thank you from my heart to yours. Really, thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm gonna ask.
So let me say this. I hope anyone who decides to work on borders don't have to experience what Victor and I have experienced. But at its worst, it gets worse than that. And you still have to go on. You do. You truly do. When I heard the little girl say that, it broke my heart. But I reached out to, there are therapy sessions inside the encampment. I reached out to one of the doctors and, I was like, you need to link up with this little girl and her mom. But then after that, I went back to work. But that's what leadership is about. Nothing can stop. It can't. Endurance is like the biggest thing that needs to go on in your mind. Whenever you feel like stopping and you feel sad, you should stop if you feel that down for like a day or two. And then you need to get back up and go back to work. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry to say that. But you do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being a living, breathing example of everything that you've shared and for sharing. Thank you, Felicia. Really, I'm gonna ask Anna to help so we can continue and learn more from you. But I just want to convey my deepest gratitude and respect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sorry, Dr. Ash, and thank you, Felicia, for that amazing answer. I truly can't imagine what people in my own country have to go through. I think it's so sad that it's such a big crisis and that racism still plays an issue, right? Like, you would think that we would be past that, but it's still a really big issue in the border. I would now like to hand it over to Michelle, who would be asking the next question.
Thank you, Anna. And yeah, I want to echo everything that Dr. Ash said. I really appreciate you being here and everything that you do and who you are as a person. So thank you. My question is, as you know, we are already seeing a rise in climate refugees. And I'm curious how you've seen this reflected in your work at the US-Mexico border and when you first started to notice that people were leaving their homes because of climate-related events.
Let me say during Matamoros times, because we were more focused on education and we've always kind of been rapid response, just more so now in Reynosa. We never really asked, like, why are you here? Reynosa was very different. I mean, we are connected to the lawyers. We did, if you ever have time, the Wisha cases. That was through Victor and I, because the lawyers aren't allowed to cross in Mexico. So we had to do the pre-screening for the American lawyers. We were the ones who sent pictures of the documents and everything to the American lawyers so they could qualify for Wisha and cross legally into our country. It was during that time when it was like, what are you doing here? Because I had to know to see if you qualified in Wisha. That's when I started seeing pictures of people like with water up to their neck, with whatever little belongings they could put on top of their head, with their kids floating next to them. Like I knew about Honduras because one of our original teachers to Matamoros, her family went through it. I knew about Haiti because that's awful, 10 years apart and still they're getting no help. I knew I did have an idea about some of it. As we were speaking to more people for Wisha, that's when I started getting a lot more pictures of people's homes just destroyed, their land destroyed. Like a lot of people come from farming backgrounds. It was just really doing Reynosa because we were helping the American lawyers out so much. And the pictures that they were sending me, it was awful. People think you tell an asylum seeker, you can't come into our country, they're going to go home. They have no home. They're going to live inside a camp, which is what they're doing now a second time. They have nothing to return to, absolutely nothing. There are no streets. There's no home. So only thing you're doing is creating another encampment. There's nothing to go back to. That's Reynosa's when I started really becoming aware of how climate change has literally destroyed countries. It's awful. The pictures were very surprising to me. It was, and it was sad. And then some people actually waited for the water to descend, go down, and then went back to whatever was left of their home, trying to salvage stuff. There was nothing to salvage. Everything was destroyed. So when they come to a border city, they literally come with the clothes they have on. That's it. We often see children come there with no shoes on. We give out shoes and clothing. And then the mother or parent or father will try to get clothing for the child first. And then a week or two later, they'll ask, hey, do you have any clothes for me? I don't have any clothes. I don't think people really understand how much climate change and just really factors into asylum seekers, why they're coming to our country. They're coming to our country for a better life, to have a chance at something. Whereas in their country, everything's destroyed. I'm not going to talk bad about anyone's government, but the government's very different and it's not built to help their people. So they come to the US because they think, okay, the US government, we have a chance here. It's built to help its citizens, not realizing it's the US government making you live in that encampment. Most people don't put one and one together. They really, truly don't. They think the US is this great thing and never question, why are you forced to live inside of an encampment? So at times that's been really hard to explain to people because they don't understand it. And then most don't want to believe you when you tell them. They don't. They just think the US is this wonderful place and you're telling them like, this is the US government doing this to you. They're like, no. It's like, okay, all you can do is tell them the truth and then they go from there.
Thank you so much, Felicia, for answering the question and providing some insight on how this was something that you weren't even aware of at first, but then through your work, it was impossible to not be aware of it after a certain point. So I appreciate you answering.
Well, let me add something else. Inside the second shelter that we're funding, it's going to be like a farming in the middle of it, where like pigs and chicken and all of that, because there's a good number of people who do come from farming backgrounds. So we are trying to put something that they are familiar with inside the second shelter to make them feel more comfortable and more relaxed, something that they're used to doing that was taken away from them. So we do realize how important that is to people as they are stuck in Mexico. We are trying to make it something like their home. And the second shelter also it's dorms, it's not tents. So the second shelter is something very different than from the Matamoros encampment, from anything that y'all have seen so far if you've been keeping up with the border. The second shelter is built very differently. Okay, that's it, Michelle. Thanks.
Thank you, Felicia. I'm going to pass it back to Anna now.
Thank you so much. That was such an interesting answer that you gave us, and how, because even if it's not the first question you ask, now that it's coming up as they are there, you realize that it's getting worse, right? Now, so maybe before it was just a fraction of them or a few of them who were there because of climatic conditions, but now this percentage keeps growing and growing. I would now like to hand it over to Ale, who will be asking our next question.
Thank you so much. Thirdly, you are one of the most admirable people I have ever heard. Thank you. Really, I have no words to say how much admiration I have for you and your work. Thanks for sharing with us. Really, thank you. Well, I would love to ask, how can the organization who work with climate refugees advocate for better immigration policies that ensure basic human rights?
Oh my gosh, my phone cut out. Say it one more time. What was the question?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
How can the organization who work with climate refugees advocate for better immigration policies that ensure basic human rights?
This is the difficult part, because if you're talking about climate change, then you're going to have to be out in Reynosa gathering data. You would be. That's something I wish the Sidewalk School could do, but we don't. Like that doesn't. We have to feed people and shelter people, and education. But I hope that would be something an organization could do one day, but you would have to spend time out inside the encampment, talking to people. It's not hard to find, I'll tell you that. It would be very easy to find someone who's fled their home country because of climate change. It'd probably take you speaking to 1 to 3 people and you'll find someone. The number has risen. It has. But I don't know if there's an organization out there collecting that type of data. That's the problem. But that's what would have to be done. We don't do WISHA anymore. WISHA, that stopped last year. So like if you're talking about a period of time where there was some data collected, that would be either me or Victor. But I think Wisha was like 2 months or something. It wasn't that long of a period that Biden gave us to get people across legally. Now it's humanitarian parole, and climate change does not factor into that. That does not get you into our country. If you ever say, oh, it's because my home was destroyed by this hurricane, this tornado, our US government will go, okay, we'll live in Mexico now. That doesn't count. So climate, that would be great if an organization came out and collected data, presented it to our US government and say, this is why this should count. This huge group of people should not just be like disregarded and left in Mexico. No asylum seekers should be, to be honest. I mean, there are wars not only in the Ukraine, a European country. There are wars all around the world where Ethiopians should be allowed into our country, but they are not. They're not. They're Black. So they sit in Reynosa, along with the Africans, along with the Haitians, whose country's been hit twice. And our government tells them good luck as Ukrainians are let into our country freely. Climate change should be added. It should be. People have no place to go back to. No home, no street. There's nothing to go home to. But I don't, as I told you, our US government doesn't fund NGOs on the Mexico side. So any organization that is willing to go out to a border city to collect that data, you have to fund yourself, unfortunately. And let me tell you, the Sidewalk School, we had, the first year we got $0 from anybody. And to me, that's, my colleagues, they're white. I think I'm unusual for many reasons. One is that I'm brown. I'm a Black woman out here doing it. So I have to, and Victor is Native American. So we have to prove ourselves 100 times over to get $1 out of somebody. But our work now, you can visibly see with your eyes. You can see where your money's going. The work you're talking about, you would have to find a foundation that's okay, not visibly seeing your work, but knows that you are collecting data and that this will be used to put forth to the US government to say, add this group of people in. They are also fleeing from something very serious. So I've had this conversation with someone else, and she has been at it for 7 years, trying to get climate change added in. She has never been funded by any foundation. And when I heard that, that broke my heart. That's awful. 7 years and no one's willing to fund you. It just shows you what our government's concentrating on. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you so much, Felicia. That it's really interesting to hear all of everything you're telling us and learn about all the amazing work you're doing there and how, as you say, there's not enough funding to have someone who's collecting data or who's really going like to promote different legislation and things, because the problem is so big that it has to be, the necessities of the people have to be covered first. So with this in mind, my next question is a bit related to what we're talking about, because it is known that developed countries are responsible for the biggest percentage of historical emissions. However, the developing nations are the ones who are suffering the consequences the most, and they're the ones who have to be fleeing their homes. So how can we get developed countries to take this responsibility and over their emissions and help those who are being displaced by these emissions they caused?
Oh, that's a big question. I don't know if I can tackle that answer, to be honest with you. I mean, so far, the US has not, I guess under Biden, Kamala Harris went to other countries trying to figure out, what's the root cause of all this displacement. and Biden was supposed to help these other countries so people wouldn't be displaced. That's a big answer, big question.
Yeah, maybe if
I
we raise
don't
it
know.
and more down to it, how can we raise awareness about how this is happening, right? Because there's a lot of bias still in the US about Mexican refugees, no, and they don't realize that there's more causes to why they're being displaced.
That is true. That is very true. First, let me say, I often hear on the US side how it's a bunch of Mexicans living in the encampment. People don't even bother to separate people, like Hondurans, Guatemalans, people from Mexico. Like, it's just like clumped. First of all, most people don't know about the encampment. That's the main problem. That's the biggest problem. Second, if you do know about the encampment, then you're calling everyone just this one name, and that's not true. People are there for different reasons. And then if you dive into it just a little bit deeper, and you see why so many Hondurans are there, that doesn't take a lot of research. You can just Google it and pop up the devastation to their country. Same thing for Haitians. I mean, that doesn't probably take you less than a minute to find out why so many people are at our border. How can you bring more attention to it? I mean, we've been screaming at the top of our lungs for 4 years now. I don't think most people have heard of the Sidewalk School. We're building shelters at this point, and you probably still have never heard of our little NGO. Because it does take a lot of money and power behind it to get the message out. And our US government won't even fund that. So it's individuals like yourself. So Victor and I are two voices. You could be the third, the fourth. It needs to build to where more people are saying this is a problem. This is an issue that needs to be looked at and then fixed. Fix it. Climate change, like, this is just the beginning of what's to come, but that goes into many other issues as well. Like, how did we get to this point? And could we have stopped it? Yes, we could have stopped it, but we're not. And it's continuing on, and more people are getting displaced. And why is the US government not doing more to help these countries and the people who are sitting at our border? Like, all of that, we would have to be in this meeting for hours because that's so many different things that could be touched upon. Like, why are we allowing this? How come no one's discussing this? Why is it that it's just minorities kept out, but if you're white, you can come in? Why is this war important, but this war isn't important? Yet they're both going on at the same time. Why is it that people's homes and their cities and towns can be destroyed, yet that doesn't qualify for humanitarian parole? Or WISHA, it didn't qualify for WISHA either. The US government blocks climate change at every turn. And we've been out there for a year. We still work with the lawyers who get people across. That has never stopped. That continues on to this day. So I know what cases qualify and what cases don't. And climate change, Hondurans, Haitians, no. What qualifies for humanitarian parole is a physical illness that can be seen. And that's it. If it's not that, you're not getting into the US. If you're a minority, if you are Ukrainian, you are getting humanitarian parole within 30 days, and you are allowed to cross legally into our country with no illnesses in sight. None. The disparity, it's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's crazy to see how, like you said, the differences, right? That some things are considered okay and they help there, but then some other things that are happening are not being looked into. And I think this really raises the point of how, as you said, we can all be advocates for speaking up about this issue and really making it seen around the world. I would now like to hand it over to Philo, who will be asking the next question.
Thank you, Anna. So my question is regarding what you were just talking about, what each person can do. So with climate-related events and geopolitical issues being escalating in different parts of the world, there is bound to be increasing refugees in the coming years and decades, and that's just unavoidable. So looking at it from an addressing it point of view in a legitimate manner, how do you and not all of us are at the border able to engage in the grassroots, but the issue does need engagement from across sectors and people from across the world. So how do you think the young people can advocate for refugee justice, and what tools and arguments are needed for the youth and people to push for action at the higher level?
So I wish there was more. I wish there was just funding for what you got for climate change. The Sidewalk School, like I said, we got $0 the first year. I had to use my life savings to make the Sidewalk School work and survive. And even the second year, I put in some of my own money. There has to be something that people can see. At least in Matamoros and Reynosa, the foundations that have been funding the Sidewalk School. There has to be data. Y'all have to show them something. Like, this is what's happening. This is how many people are living inside of an encampment. This is why it's important that you do something about it. I don't know if any NGO, climate change NGO, has that type of money to support themselves for like a year or two and do that type of work. Let me also say, and this touches back upon racism a little bit, our country isn't set up to let minorities succeed. It's just not. Our country is set up to where it pushes us down. And as a minority, me personally, I have to do everything I can to go up. I'm already at the lowest level. So now I'm just going to fight to go this way. As things continue on, like the person I was speaking with about climate change, she is also a minority. And she has not been able to get funding for 7 years. I have seen my colleagues who are white get hundreds of thousands of dollars in funding. No degree, no certification, no past experience. I do have a degree. I was a certified teacher. I did go to grad school. All those questions are asked of me almost in every interview, where it's not asked of my colleagues. My hope is that one day a person, an NGO that deals with climate change, who has their own funding somehow or have your own money, can do it, can go out there to a border city and collect the data and then show it to a foundation and say, fund me. If that ever happens, you will get into meetings with the US government. I've had multiple meetings, private meetings with our government. I've had face-to-face meetings with Secretary Mayorkas on more than 2 occasions at this point. If you are out there and you are working with the team as a group, like in Reynosa, at some point you will be sitting in front of a high-level government official, and they will ask you, what is going on? What do you think? That's your chance to say, this is what's going on. This is the data I've collected. This is what I think about climate change and how you need to change it. Secretary Mayorkas, every meeting we've had with him and his staff, they're always taking notes. And then they usually pull you aside afterwards if they're interested in what you're saying and ask more questions about what they can do different. How can we be better? How can we make this better? Every single meeting we've had with them. But that's funding that a climate change NGO would have to come up with, and you would have to be okay with not being paid for a year. Like, all of this is very difficult. It's very hard to do. And if you don't have a life savings to give up and be okay with, then that's why this job is it's hard. This job is hard for many different reasons. But one of them is financial. Financial backing is hard. You probably won't get paid for the first year or two. And you have to be able to support yourself, support your NGO. I mean, you're talking about endurance. There are many things you're going to have to endure if this is the line of work you want to get into.
Thank you. So a lot of what I know about issues at the border and refugee crisis was limited, was enhanced by listening to you today. So I think it's really important to, bring out stories of your experiences and of experiences of all the asylum seekers who are waiting in encampment. So data collection is really vital, I believe, to push for advocacy and also for decisions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So let me add this. The Sidewalk School, we help almost all the NGOs in Reynosa, because that's just something Victor and I decided to do. We've donated to every NGO. We donate to churches to this day. But that's just our personal thing. If anybody came and said, hey, I'm collecting data about the asylum seekers who fled their home countries because it was destroyed, Victor and I would say, well, how can we help you? We do have a 3-story building. We have schools in Reynosa. And if anyone ever wanted to do that, then we would help that person, their staff, their NGO, because this is a team effort. And we want you to feel part of the team because we have the same goal. And the goal is to bring more attention to minority asylum seekers stuck in border cities unfairly and whose lives are in danger every second of the day. And how can we get that to stop? That's a team effort. So if anyone ever wanted to do that, Victor and I would be like, how can we help you? What do you need to make all this possible? Do you need an office? You can have one of ours. Do you need to speak to asylum seekers? Let us help you out. But like I said, it would take a person that had the financial backing on their own and someone who's okay not getting paid for a year or two.
Thank you. It just reflects back to what you told us about leadership in the beginning. What you offer to do is a living example of the leadership that you told us about. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, Anna, I know, let me ask Felicia, it's already the hour, but Kevin had a question here, and if you feel we have the time, just 4 or 5 minutes to respond to his question. He wanted to ask you what your typical day looks like at the encampment, if you'd be okay to share that, please. Thank you.
I don't know if we have. So when you work inside of an encampment, you try to make there be a routine. Trust me, you do, because we're just humans and we work better that way with a routine. But usually there's something in it that throws it off because it is an encampment and it is Reynosa and it is Mexico. But usually, like me, I'll wake up at 6:30 and I check my phone immediately and see what questions or text messages I need to answer. Then I check my calendar to see what meetings I have and then set off to Reynosa. around 8 a.m. Reynosa is like an hour drive from my home. So it takes a little while to get there. And then immediately it's the school across the street from the encampment, because I have to speak to the manager. And then that's when I find out if an asylum seeker hasn't already privately messaged me what has happened inside the camp from yesterday to today, because usually a lot happens inside that encampment within a 10-hour span. 3 days ago, there was a brawl inside the encampment with men, and they moved all the children to a tent, and it scared the kids. Before that, the city of Reynosa came and threw away people's homes that were on the sidewalk because he didn't want them on the sidewalk anymore. So I was getting sent videos of people's tents, their clothes, their belongings thrown into the middle of the street by the police because it was on the sidewalk. They tried to throw away the aqua tank of water because it was on the sidewalk. That aqua tank costs a lot of money, and that was paid for by NGOs, American NGOs. But luckily, some asylum seekers took it and said, no, you're not going to throw this away. Yesterday, we went to check on the porta potties. 5 are broken. I mean, there's just so much that goes on inside of an encampment. And then from there, if it's a good day, we can go to both shelters and check on Senda de Vida and check on Lady of Guadalupe to make sure they're doing okay. They don't need anything. From those 2 shelters, we go to the brand new 2 shelters that are being built. One on the baseball field, take some pictures, make sure it's going okay. Send that to the group chat, talk to the person over it to make sure there's no problems that we need to address. Then we go to the second brand new shelter. Talk to Pastor Rosario to make sure there are no issues. Everything's going along as planned. Make sure it stays on schedule. Take pictures for the group chat. From there, we go back to the school. Make sure we didn't miss anything. Make sure we've covered everybody. Everyone's okay. There are no medical emergencies. Every day there's a medical emergency. So then we send people to doctors. I mean, there is no really typical day. We just try to cover everything. That's literally what we do. And what are you doing out there for? So, I'm sorry, Ash, what does that say? There's so many people.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then we do have a hidden school in Reynosa. It's in a neighborhood of asylum seekers, and they know like where the school is located.
Yeah.
But it's a lot. And then in all of that, sometimes we run across the Mexican officials as we try to go about our normal day. Whenever we do, they always want to talk to us. And then in that, our US meetings, Zoom, that usually I'll have on my phone as I'm talking to the Mexican official. And I'm just like listening to one, I'm trying to listen to one. As you know, I don't speak Spanish. I'm trying to listen to the other. And that's happened many times. I'll be on a US meeting via Zoom. I'll be sitting in person with the Mexican official, both meetings happening at the same time, as both sides are trying to tell me what they want to happen. And as they're telling me what they want to happen, I'm dealing in real time with what's actually happening in front of me. So all those things are going on, and you have to keep that straight. And as you listen to what both sides are asking from you, and as you're seeing what's really happening in front of you, you then have to make decisions like that. Make a decision. Hurry up and decide. If you don't decide, someone will decide for you. You don't want that. You want to be in control of what that something is, if possible. If not possible, trust your team and let them make the decision. But if possible, you need to make that decision because it's going to affect your NGO and how things run. But these decisions, they do unfortunately have to be made very quickly, and they want to answer now, and you need to give them an answer. Victor and I talk all the time about what he thinks and what I think, and then we come to a compromise, and then we get back to whichever side's asking for that answer. That's how we got the 2 shelters going. to be honest, because both sides, nobody wants an encampment. Y'all need to do something about it. Okay, well, what do you want us to do? It was the shelter. Okay, are you going to fund it? Nope, we're not going to fund it. Is the Mexican government going to fund it? Mexican government at first was like, And then as the other American NGOs came in, they were like, okay, we'll fund it. Or they're funding some of it. And the state of Tamaulipas and the city of Reynosa have put in quite a bit of funding into the baseball field. Our US government, no. But Mexico, yes. They were like, okay, they don't want the encampment. The US government doesn't want an encampment. Build a shelter. Let's go. So the American NGOs have put in money. The Mexican government has put in money. That's how you got the shelters. But that's somewhat of a typical day for us. Not unless something like this occurs, a conference, then like this is my morning. After this, we go to Reynosa.
Yeah.
And then it just changes.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since there's so many crises and you're constantly trying to, resolve. Yeah.
Yes.
And then move on, with the same level of zeal and energy and everything. But I think we've taken a precious hour of your time, but I want to say that for us, it's a lifetime and beyond of learning and really, really profound inspiration. And I just want to say that, for all the young people and everybody else who's listening here, it will be just amazing if everybody could play their part to strengthen not just the resolve, but really the work on the ground, the things that you're leading, the lives that you're changing, the strength with which you're pushing ahead. And if all of us could just play our part in lending whatever it is we're able to just make that a little stronger, push it a little further, it's going to touch many lives and many to come, not just those here now, but I know many more. Just the example that you shared with us about the 10-year-old girl and her mother, and I just want to say you're spot on about the fact that we've had wars playing out around the world for so long. There's just, sadly, we're at a point where we call everything that we're doing development, but it's ridden with disparities and racism and inequities and serious injustices. And your every effort is to combat that. And I just want this message to resound in everybody's hearts and everything that you do. And I know there are a lot of people out there who are wanting to think really seriously about what they want to do with the rest of their lives, how they can develop their careers. And if you really want to support progress, and if you really want to do this in the name of true development, then I sincerely, my plea is that listen to the beautiful voice we've had the blessing of listening to in the course of this morning for us, but whatever time it is for you, and take it to heart and then act on it. That's I think the message we take away. And I just want to say that our love and respect and admiration and support for you begins here and has been for a long time, but is forever and ever and eternally. And I'd love, as we close, if you would share with us, Felicia, just, I know there's numbers that you embrace through each encampment and shelter. These are infinite, because there's, like you said, the issues are so prevalent, and we're just working to tackle this on a daily basis. But to get a sense, just for anybody out there who's willing to put in what is possible to support, what is the cost of a single encampment if it's able to encompass everything that you wish for it to encompass in terms of, all the essential facilities, if it was all comprehensive in terms of everything that needs to be delivered, just for everybody to listen to what this means and lend support, please.
So like the baseball field, that costs something like $400,000, if not just a little bit more than 400,000, and it's not even done yet. Like the second shelter, like $250,000. That's just a building. That's not counting anything else going on. That's just the building of them. All of this money, like, I use the word hustle. I'm from the South, but that's what Victor and I do. It's a daily hustle. And you need to figure it out, make it work. But at the same time, keep everything else going, keep the team together, keep everyone down the same path, look at the same goal. Let's just all get there. That's like, if anyone's considering doing this, it's a lot, but it can be done. All of this can be done. You just have to be willing to do it. And it's just endurance, flexibility. It's a lot of things that go into it, but it's possible. All of this is possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, you personified that perseverance and you're right. I mean, all of this is possible because those costs get covered. People who have access to the funds spend it in less than a morning. So yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. And I hope for people who are listening, we could mobilize support to strengthen, everything you're doing. You don't need anything from the resolve standpoint. You need it from the practical point of view. And I hope we're able to, bring people together. I just want to thank you, Felicia, and you're, like I said, a precious part of our family. And I wish to thank you and the entire family, those who were here with us, those who will listen later, who are listening remotely right now. This is something that we keep close to our hearts and will continue to magnify as we go along. So I just want to say, with all our love and our gratitude, our respect and our profound admiration, and permission, please, if we may, to get a picture with you before we close out this, among, I hope, many conversations, but more importantly, actions. So if we could seek your permission, Felicia, to get a picture, and if so, I'll request everybody to turn on their cameras if you're able to, please. Thank you.